Welcome everyone to a special 1-hour edition of Becoming Awesome, AWS's live stream podcast where Amazon insiders introduce you to the humans of AWS. I'm your host, Ray Thomas, senior recruiter from AWS's infrastructure organization. My co-host, Jenna Lass, is on her much-needed PTO, so she'll be missed. And whether you're streaming, through the live link and just lurking, or sign into your Twitch account or YouTube account, live and ready to engage with us in the chat room, or even just watching video on demand later on. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And for those of you in the US, I hope you all had a fantastic Memorial Day weekend with friends and loved ones. And for anyone who served and or still serving their military, thank you for your service. Honestly, without that, I wouldn't have met my wife. Long story, we'll share it another time. So today, we bring you 3 incredible leaders from our AWS infrastructure organization's network engineering team. We will get to know more about them in and outside of work, diving into their teams, learnings, hiring, future goals, and taking on any questions from the audience. So with that said, let's bring them all on the camera. 1, 2, 3. So we have Jess Szmajda, GM for Firewall Manager, Maria Papaleo, UX Manager for AIS, and Sarah McComb, Principal Backbone Business Developer. How is everyone doing today?
Good.
Yeah, good.
Awesome. So I'm going to switch the camera views, and what I'm going to do is bring you all on one at a time, and I'm going to ask something from employer brand. So you know what? I have you on top first, Sarah. So before we go into a full intro, describe what you do in 10 words.
Oh, God. Let's see. I build the physical infrastructure of the internet. I think that's less than 10 words.
That's awesome. I've seen people go way beyond 10 words. And Maria was actually counting, so that's awesome. Can you give us like a brief intro to your full background?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Sarah McComb. I am a principal business developer focused on the AWS backbone. So what that means is literally the physical infrastructure that supports AWS, all of the cool programs and the customers that ride on our systems ride over the backbone to get from place to place. Specifically, what I do is I focus on strategic investments across the Pacific Ocean, which means subsea cables. So I both invest and acquire assets on existing subsea cable systems, as well as develop builds for new systems, which is what I'm currently focused on.
Pretty awesome. All right, we'll dive into that in a little bit then. Let's go to Jess. Jess, in 10 words, what do you do?
I help customers solve security problems at scale.
Awesome. There you go. That's Sarah. Maria also said, "Oh, that's 7." Very cool.
I had time to think about that one too.
I wish I caught you live. You already knew the question beforehand, so you kind of had time to prepare. Please give a full intro into your background.
Yeah, so I'm a general manager here at AWS. General managers are kind of like mini CEOs of a business unit. My business unit is the Firewall Manager product, and we're building a new secret project that we're going to hopefully launch later this year. Very excited about. But Firewall Manager, AWS Firewall Manager helps customers audit for and then apply configuration for supported firewall services like security groups, NACLs, AWS Network Firewall, AWS WAF, Shield. It helps make sure customers can have those security services configured appropriately across all their accounts, across all their environments to make sure that they're meeting their security standards. I've been a general manager at AWS for almost 4 years now, ever since I've been with the company. Before that, I was general manager for VPN products, and I helped run IP address management. And before all that stuff, I was a CTO at various companies. So I've done a whole bunch of stuff.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining. We'll dig into that a little bit more. Let's get you, Maria. 10 words. I know you counted. Let's see what they count.
All right. I design customer-obsessed products that just make sense. Also 7 words. I kept the 7.
The 777. We have the 777 here. So awesome. All right. So that's a new one for me. Can you give us a little bit more info on your background?
Yeah, so I am the UX manager, the user experience manager for all the products in the AWS infrastructure group. So we're a little bit more broad than both Sarah and Jess. We look across the entire space. So right now we support 9 services, 34 products, and about 800 bazillion initiatives within each of them. So I run a team of fabulous designers that are kind of agency shops of one. We have a saying on our team that while people expect us to design products that you click, we frequently design products that just click. And what I mean by that is we take the user and put them right in the middle of all of our decision making so that in the role, in the job, in the tasks that they're doing, they're having logical experiences that they don't have to think about to get their jobs done.
That's awesome. I think UX is so important that some people don't put a lot of effort into. And I think that kind of makes or breaks it for like the user, for like users, right? Like if the app, hypothetically, if your app does something incredible, but if the design is horrible, I'll get frustrated and leave. That's the way my brain works. I'm sure there's a competitor doing something similar. And if theirs work better, I'm going over there. So.
Absolutely. And frequently the piece of UX that is often missed is the kind of thought layer. I say we design things that just click. What I mean by that is the information architecture, the logical architecture of like, how is somebody just making decisions? So we definitely work on CLIs and SDKs as well, as far as like the question lines and like what's the schema. I like to make a simile or a metaphor of imagine your CLI as a choose your own adventure book. So, how do you not have to hold all the different pages to find the right outcome and just know what questions and commands to put into?
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Well, before we go into everyone's careers, we'll do the deep dive later on. Let's get to know kind of you outside of work a little bit. And since I already have you on screen, Maria, let's start with you. First of all, how did you spend the weekend?
Oh my gosh. So I have kind of 2 versions of the way I like to spend weekends. So I'm both incredibly curious and introverted. I like to spend time at home with my family. I have a 4-legged ball of terror, rescue pit bull mix. He's wonderful, but he's 18 months and a lot of energy. And then the other thing I do is my husband and we have a converted, or I guess a custom off-road RV that's fully self-contained. So you often find us, like hundreds of miles off the beaten path in the desert, high desert, and various forests, just kind of living our best off-grid dreams.
That's awesome. I had a friend of mine that was coming over to meet with me, and she forgot her phone. And she forgot her AirPods and everything, right?
Wow.
And it was the first time that she was fully disconnected. And she said that 1 hour felt amazing. Now imagine you, right? There are places where you go where you're kind of disconnected. I'm not saying you're not fully connected, right? But I'm sure. But do you appreciate the time when you're not looking at anything and you're just enjoying the scenery?
I will have to admit, we do have a satellite-based internet provider where I get 47 down and 30 up.
Nice. I figured, but I just thought I would share.
I definitely worked from, right smack dab in the middle of Death Valley where cell phone service is not a thing in air conditioning.
That's awesome. Let's get you, Sarah. What did you do over the weekend?
Well, I moved into a new house a couple of months ago, as evidenced by the moving boxes that are still in the image behind me. So I spent a lot of my weekend building furniture, actually. Just lots of tables, chairs, that kind of thing. And then I also have my own 18-month-old bundle of Psycho, which is a sheepadoodle puppy, which her name is Ketchum. Actually, Maria has met her. So she's my own brand of crazy that dominates my house. And so it's definitely a constant game of how do we tire out the dog?
That's fun, especially when they're puppies still. Mm-hmm. That's going to take a lot of effort. And you, Jess, what did you do over the weekend?
I also have a 6-year-old pit bull greyhound mix, so that was fun. But but I also have a 9-year-old who was with me this weekend, and most of that was spent, playing video games and watching YouTube because 9-year-olds.
Yeah.
But also we got to go out and there was a friend's birthday party at this go-kart track with like full gas go-karts and stuff. So that was pretty exciting. My kid both loved it and hated it, which I think is a good outcome overall for something that's kind of scary like that.
That's awesome. So let me ask this, and I'll start with you since you're on camera. So, can you share the most memorable day or vacation you had and what made it incredibly memorable?
Yeah, well, in 2008, I backpacked across Japan by myself for like 2 weeks. And that was just an incredible journey, the whole thing. I stayed in every kind of accommodation you can imagine. I ate all kinds of food. I saw all kinds of things. But I think the single best day was the day that I took the Shinkansen, the bullet train from Tokyo to Kyoto. And I got off and I walked all over Kyoto and I went to the Golden Pavilion and saw just these incredible buildings and incredible history and nature. And yeah, I just had a whole blast. It was a great trip. So
Awesome. And if would you rather be able to travel everywhere for free or eat everywhere for free?
Oh, travel. That one's easy. That's like a gimme.
I figured as much.
Yeah.
Let's get you, Sarah. What about you? What's the most memorable day you had?
I would say, so I'm lucky enough that my day-to-day job actually for Amazon includes a lot of travel. And so, and international, and I go to some amazing places and some amazing cities. So what I've learned when I have time to travel for myself, I want to go where there are no people. I don't like to people. I don't want to people. So usually when it's my time, it's how do I get away from people? So it was back in 2017. I took a 2-week trip to Iceland and did, rented the car, did the ring road. I had stayed at some amazing lodging, ate weird food. But it was just this unbelievable raw beauty as well. One of those places that just spoke to my soul. So that was hands down one of my favorite vacations.
Awesome. And would you rather travel everywhere for free or eat?
Travel, 100% travel. Especially because, are you kidding me? Some of these places, food's cheap. So
yeah, it's very true. It's very true. I agree. And what about you, Maria?
So mine's a little funny. So my favorite trip was one that never meant to be a trip. So when COVID started happening in the United States, I was on a long weekend trip with the guy that I was dating at the time. And then we came out of Organ Pipe National Monument in South Arizona to not being able to fly home. So that trip turned from a 4-day weekend to a 72-day lap around the United States. In a different version of a 4-wheel camper. Surprise, I married the guy.
Nice.
So we did a lap around the United States in about 72 days, just kind of seeing, where the road is. And actually, fun fact, one of the contestants on the 2 previous seasons of American Idol wrote a song about it, about our trip, which is really cool. I'll send you guys the link. It's cool. Her name is Samantha Moss, and it's called The Journey.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Definitely share it in the chat, and we'll throw it up there. So yeah, thank you all for again for you, travel everywhere or eat for free.
So I'm actually going to say eat for free because you can't eat at the same place. So it kind of is an intrinsic level of travel associated to it. And I love experiencing the world on the end of an eating utensil. I think it's really fun. So I'll say eat. Yum, yum.
Nice. I don't know what Dubinator 089 means. Would be cool to order some music. I have some sick playlist. Okay. Anyways, with that, and also part-time hobo, welcome back. I heard there's a place with no people called Antarctica. Actually, there's a lot of people now. There's so many people traveling there because just to get there. So
it's on the list though. Definitely on the list.
There you go. So let's see. Let's go to you, Jess. Let's dive a little bit more into your role as a GM. Tell us a little bit about how, how it's kind of organized. Like, who do you interact with? What other orgs? And how do they all work with each other?
Yeah. So like I said, a GM is kind of like a mini CEO of a company. So I'm responsible for the P&L for my business, profit and loss. So that means everything from money coming in to money going out, making sure that that results in a net benefit to AWS and to our customers. And I think that's a really important way to look at this is that, we are the world's most customer obsessed company. And so delivering results for our customers is what drives us as a business. And like as far as I'm concerned, like profits are one thing, but helping customers is even more important. So obviously I have to build a sustainable business that can help customers over the long term. It wouldn't help to just, give everything away for free and help customers tomorrow. Then like a year down the road, we'd be out of luck.
Right.
So got to make a balance for everybody over the long term. But yeah, it's all about driving results for customers. And so like a lot of the time I interact with customers directly. I get on the phone with customers. I talk to them. I hear what's working and what's not working for them. I make sure that our plans are in line with what our customers' needs are. Like I had a call this morning with a big bank, and it's a really great conversation about what we're working on in terms of our future direction of things. The next most important thing for me is making sure that our service is operating continuously and delivering results for customers on a continuous basis. So I have a weekly meeting where I dig in with my team on how the service is working. I get into deep technical detail. Like I said, I used to be a CTO, that's a chief technology officer before I came to Amazon. So I am still very technical. I write code for fun sometimes. So like I get into deep detail in terms of like what's working, what isn't working, what our metrics look like, what's going on here, what caused this spike, what is our P99.9 on certain region, whatever it is. We look in very close detail to make sure everything is working well. The next most important thing to me is in the same, like actually more important than operations is security. And in fact, like anytime a security issue comes up, that takes the world. Like we take those super, super seriously, especially in security products, which is what my domain is. Security is super important to us. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about it too much because we generally build things securely. But if anything does come up, that's everything, all hands on the table for that. So then the next thing that I tend to look at is feature development. This is delivering on our roadmap. So like I have an engineering background. I've also led product, I've led design, I've led all kinds of different roles in terms of product development. And we're working on a really major new change to how AWS Firewall Manager works that I can't talk about right now, unfortunately, but I am very excited about it. And so a lot of my time is spent working on that, either like working out the detailed product choices that we're making sure that for the user UX perspective, like I work quite a bit with Maria and her team on this project, and we get into all kinds of detail on making sure things are flowing right and getting the right outcomes, making sure that the technology is going to be built to scale and to solve our problems effectively over time. So there's that. And then, of course, another huge area of my job is the people. I'm a people manager. I manage other managers. I manage individuals. So I spend a lot of time talking to my team, seeing what's working, what isn't working. I talk to my peers. I talk to my leadership. So that's a lot of my time. I also have, I think everybody at AWS, everybody at Amazon probably has some number of like extra hats that they wear, like side quests, I think of them as.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of different side quests that I'm also on. This week, we have a bunch of big strategic planning for AWS security products across the whole company that I'm helping to organize. And I'm really looking forward to getting into a lot of depth with a whole bunch of different leaders about what the future of AWS security products might look like and how we can solve customers' pains and make their lives easier over time. Just one other note is I do, talk a lot with like our field teams, our sales teams, our technical support teams, like all the other different components of what you would think of as a complete business. I do get into and I care a lot about. Thankfully at Amazon, we have a ton of support. That stuff's basically handled for me, as opposed to in my startups when at one point I was the chief people officer for a while in one of my startups, which was interesting at a company of 200. So
Right.
used to wearing all kinds of hats, but here, I get to rely on other people who are absolutely incredible in their field. Like I tell people all the time, I've worked with the smartest people I've ever worked with here at Amazon. And I'm just always in awe and really excited to work with everybody else and in awe of their skills and backgrounds and everything else.
So before I go to, Sarah, I wanted to ask you, you look at the team, which leadership principle do you think there's a pattern of that they really all exemplify?
Well, I mean, the gimme is customer obsessions.
Right. Well, that's a given. Everyone has to be. It has
Yeah.
to make customer sense. Past that, what do you think? Do you
I think
better?
I think the LP that's probably really shining right now for my team is bias for action. We are trying to solve a unique hard problem that's really new to everybody, and everybody's just trying a whole bunch of ideas, and we're shipping and delivering results as quickly as we can. But bias for action is definitely in the spotlight right now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. All right, let's have you, Sarah. Let's talk about your team. Like, tell me a little bit more about your role, because you said undersea cables. That's really fascinating. I do a lot of fishing. I won't go deep sea fishing, but I know there's a lot of cabling and everything throughout. So I'm fascinated by this.
Yep. So basically, the AWS backbone team, we're responsible for all of the network connections between all of the various AWS regions worldwide, as well as connecting to the various different edge pops that exist as well for CloudFront and the other product groups like Direct Connect that utilize them. So my role specifically, especially when it comes to subsea cables, over 99% of the world's communications run over subsea cables, which are literally fiber optic cables that sit on the bottom of the ocean. For a lot of people, that kind of blows their mind, especially if they're something that they're not aware of, which I would say for the almost 20 years that I've spent in this industry, I didn't really have much knowledge into them either until about 10 years ago when I started to get into this type of work. But for AWS in general, the backbone team, we really focus on making sure that there is enough network capacity in place for the product groups to function. One of the things that we're sort of, I would say, bracing ourselves for right now and trying to determine exactly what all the implications are going to be is the increase in AI and machine learning, and what that's going to do to our network and the needs. And there are places where in the past, we might not have needed to make big, huge investments or make big leaps in the amount of capacity that we have. And now we're definitely at that situation where it's saying, okay, all right, if this goes into play, where can I get fiber pairs today? And how long is it going to take me to build a new system? And so there's a lot of implications that we have to take into account there.
What is the most challenging part of your job right now?
I would say the most challenging part is sort of currently what our demand is, because in certain places, I should have started 5 years ago. I've got a cable project right now that I'm looking at building between Japan and Washington State. It would be one of the first cables to land in Washington State in over 25 years. So it's going to be its own separate set of challenges. You're dealing with geopolitical issues. You're dealing with permitting bodies. You're dealing with indigenous groups and environmental groups. There are lots of obviously benefits that subsea cable brings, but you then also have to deal with what is the impact on the environment and how are the various different components of the construction going to go through and what do you need to approve it. So it's a very, I would say, delicate balancing act. And to sort of mix my metaphors, you kind of have to get all of those puzzle pieces into place. And some of them slide in very easily, and others you need a little bit more of a nudge and a push.
Gotcha. I really appreciate that. And let's see, someone put in comments. Let me show this. Hold on. Someone put in comments, sounds like a mega interesting side of the networking side of things. Really interesting to hear how AWS calculate additional provisioning of dark fiber for sudden increases in demand over short periods of time. Yeah, thanks for that general idea. Let's see. And then part-time home, it sounds like you have to chase a lot of signatures.
Yes, that is definitely the case, both internally and externally.
I'm sure. Thank you. Maria, what about you? Tell me a little bit more about your team and your role there.
Oh my gosh. So I have a really kind of non-traditional role in AIS space. So actually, I hold the first ever of my role in infrastructure and networking services. My team just transferred in wholesale to be embedded in the group in January. So we are freshly baked. But that doesn't mean we haven't been participating for a while. So we've been working with this group as kind of like a consultory. We've been consulting with this group for a while. For almost 3 years, we were kind of on an external service team working with everybody. And, over time, we just started to really embed and ingrain. I was working with Jess when she first joined in, and we were on our other planet. And then slowly our orbit started walking in closer together. And then, we basically asteroided the ever-loving crap out of this group, and I'm so excited to be here. So it's a little bit non-traditional. Like I said, we're still trying to figure out, like we're building this plane as we sail the ship. So who knows? I love mixing metaphors too, Sarah, so I'll just go with it.
Go with it.
So we look at all of the products and services, both internal and external in AIS. So from the infrastructure networking, like monitoring the network, is there an outage? Is there not an outage? Where did it come from? So kind of the manifestation of what Sarah does. So she has the physical piece, and then we kind of start looking at the, how does it then get to customers or become the internet? As well as the products and services we then vend out to our end customer, our big C customer that Jess works on. I have been asked a few times to reduce my job to a very kind of almost pithy sense. And I say, my team designs the bips and the boops of the internet that make it go vroom.
Okay.
And I would say my team provides the highway.
Yes. Yes. You are the make it vroom. You provide the bits and the boops, and just makes it go vroom. So we have so many different things that we support, and being able to look at the landscape of all of the customers along the end-to-end customer journey, and being able to meet them where they are, when they are, and then move them around. Are they in crisis? Are they in solution? Are they in analytics mode? Are they in, keep the lights on or KTL mode, and keep them successful along the way. And it's, gosh, like I said, we have 9 services and like 34 different projects and 1 million initiatives. So I think in all, my 9 designers support like 1,200 people in total. Not all individually, they're kind of like groups. Jess has a pretty big group, and there's other people just like her all over the place. So
how do you prioritize all that?
Carefully. No, it's a good question, because each of my designers is almost like, think of like an agency experience. Like, how you hire somebody, they deep dive, they learn your area, they partner with you so deeply, they care about the same things that you do. And then you as a business unit will create that prioritization together. So since Jess is on this call, I'll use her as an example. My designer is embedded in Jess's team. They are stand-ups, they are in priority meetings, they're in escalation meetings, they're in design meetings, they're in team happy hours. They are just like part of that. And so when the prioritization happens, I trust that designer to know that business inside and out, and they are discreetly managing their product area. And then I work with all of my designers to look across AIS to saying, hey, how are we delivering for this business org in your business unit? How do you then play into that? We'll have some interesting conversations about, like, what are we doing for like the greater UX or CX initiative? We have our own internal initiatives. We recently launched something publicly called the UX Metrics Playbook, which is fantastic. And 2 of my designers, they just dug into this and ran with it. And it's they launched it as an open source project last year at the UX by UX Unconference, which is like amazing. So I'm super proud of them. So yeah, it's kind of, we're still kind of getting our feet in a lot of ways, but we're doing a lot of really great stuff.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It is challenging, especially when you're moving into a different team, supporting a different team, and everything there's a lot of moving pieces. And if you don't do all the hard work up front, you're going to waste a lot of time in the back end, right? So it's so important to take it a little slow initially, and then once you get all the information on that rocket ship, right? So
and the biggest culture shift for a lot of our service partners is really seeing the deep, dirty details of like what the front side of UX looks like. The information gathering, the analysts, the research, and then the wireframes, and this little lake of disconnect is been interesting. But hey, everyone's got a paddle, and our boats seem to not have holes in it yet.
That's awesome. Love that. And one more question that I'm going to ask this question for everyone, so what's the most surprising thing you learned about yourself working here as you're navigating all this?
Ooh, I am motivated by impossible challenges is probably a good thing. You know, I've had an entire multiple careers before this, and the thing that was frustrating me is that in those places is that, you know, I'd find these challenges and they'd almost be like extinguished before they ever happened. And then here I find these, you know, impossible challenges, and, you know, for lack of a better word, people are like, I dare you to solve it. And I was like, oh yeah, watch it. It's been really fun. It's been really great. I can speak again to Jess's group and the larger group there. You know, we have these really esoteric things we're talking about, and they're like, oh yeah, go solve it. And then I'm just like, yeah, let's do it.
It's fantastic. What about you, Jess? You know, what have you learned about yourself working here?
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that comes to mind for me is the ability to deal with like an incredibly large amount of detail. I think of myself often as a top-down thinker, which is less common at Amazon, I think, than you think. There's a lot of bottoms-up thinkers here, which is great. There's nothing one or neither is better than the other, to be very clear. But I tend to look from a strategic perspective and then work my way down into the details. And things don't make sense to me unless I can connect them to some big idea or some big concept. Whereas like my wife is entirely the opposite. Like they have like things don't make sense unless they really understand every little detail inside of it and have to build things up to get from there. So for me, like being a GM means that I have to stay on top of a lot of detail. Like all the the operational metrics or the financial metrics or the people metrics, like all those kind of things. There's a lot of numbers and stuff, and I usually don't remember, like historically at least, I didn't remember that kind of data as well as I might like or something now. And so like coming here, I was pretty intimidated by that because like definitely it's spoken with other GMs. It's like, well, you got to know your numbers, you got to know the details, you got to be into all of the things. And the thing I learned is that, no, I actually can. And it's often through the support of the mechanisms that we build here. And AWS, or Amazon in general, is very focused on mechanisms being a tool and a process built around that tool to achieve some business result. So there's like mechanisms that we run like with our monthly, weekly, or quarterly business reviews where we get into the various levels of detail. We're able to talk about things that matter and then connect them to the strategic things that I can understand and make sure we can get everything in between in a way that delivers like not just long-term success, but also like immediate success and like faster individual query responses, for example, or like a better use of specific servers to solve problems to improve cost over time, for example.
Right.
Like those things all come into perspective when we apply the right mechanisms to it. So that's been a really wonderful thing to learn here.
That's awesome. Speaking of mechanisms, this podcast itself is a mechanism, right? You know, it's what we created. It's a mechanism to again introduce the world to the people, the real human. You know, because years ago people say, "Oh, Amazonians are robots." We're not. Get to know us. You'll see, like everyone has like an incredible story. The more people you talk to, the more fascinated you are by them, and the more you gravitate towards them. So, but yeah, it's fantastic. What about you? What about you, Sarah?
I think for me, it's I can do more than I ever thought I could. In a lot of ways, you know, the person who walked in here 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, from an organization that's in a lot of ways very similar to AWS. And I think I thought at that point in time, I'm like, I got this. I know it. Not a big deal. No, I didn't know this. I didn't have this. It was a big deal. So that has been, you know, a continual development, which I think has been really great. And so I look back and I'm like, I don't know who that woman was 6 years ago. Like she would not recognize what I have become and the capabilities that I have developed within the last almost 6 years. So I feel like that's been the biggest surprise. I don't know why I was surprised, but the biggest kind of change and surprise.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Every week, I think I'm learning something else about myself. I literally the way things are here. My colleague and co-host Jenna said it last week. So just to be transparent with everyone, I was literally in my studio with all the wrestling stuff and the Becoming AWSome sign about 10 minutes before, and then the internet started crapping out again because of the construction outside. This happened for the first time last week. Here I was talking to them, we were live, and then all of a sudden blackout screens. And then she said, You're resilient. I literally ran inside the house, reconnected on the Wi-Fi here, make sure that we go live right on time. And she says, so that was something that I just, again, learned about myself. Like, oh, that's 2 weeks in a row under pressure. We're able to still deliver. So here we are.
Yep.
Again, Sarah says I have you here. Let's dive into, some of the affinity groups here. Are you part of any affinity group at all, or no?
Yeah, so I'm a part of the Amazon Women in Engineering affinity group, as well as within the broader, Amazon infrastructure group. I report up through a man named Rob Kennedy, and he has his own ID&E group that is focused on his overall organization. So my particular passion, if you will, is the advancement and promotion of women in tech, telecom, cloud, data center space. So that is kind of what I kind of always have my eye out for within our broader organization. And it's one of the privileges and the joys that came along with me when I was promoted to a principal and therefore received access to higher level conversations, especially when it comes time for, our annual rankings and ratings cycle and everything, and getting to be another voice in the room to ensure that we are being as unbiased as possible and to be able to promote and give a voice to some people who may feel voiceless. That's really what I'm particularly passionate about.
That's awesome. I find the affiliate groups to be able to have like unofficial mentors. I call it, right? So, but then at the same time, you could meet your official mentor from there too, right? So awesome. Let's see, Jess, are you part of any affiliate groups?
Yeah. So I'm in the Women in Engineering group, as well as Glamazon, which is the group for LGBT plus folks at Amazon. And I'm actually really, the one I've been most engaged with has been one that's just sort of getting off the ground, which is trans at Amazon. I'm a trans woman, and it's really exciting to be able to connect with other trans people across the company and frankly, just support each other. I think we are one of the smaller minorities in the organization, sadly. So it's great to just connect with, especially like junior engineers, and help them see like how I grew in my own roles and what I learned and how to deliver results and how to connect the dots between, where they are and where they want to be. I think, like you said, that sort of unofficial mentoring is absolutely something that I love to engage in. So yeah,
that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. It's it's like anything else. We all have family members that are open about things, and people are trying to find themselves and whatnot. And it's incredible to find all kinds of support groups here. So that's really, really fantastic. And what about you, Maria?
Yeah, so I'm part of two, and they're both kind of professionally leaning. So the first one is the ADC, or the Amazon Design Community. Surprise. They're really great. They've really taken off over the past handful of years. They have an annual conference called Conflux, which is a huge collusion of design, from front end product design to motion design to AI, voice, conversation design, visual marketing, kind of everything. It's quite wonderful to see the full perspective. And there's like offshoots, Design Breakfast is a bi-monthly thing where people can kind of come in, do their little talk more in a quiet community space. There's workshops, there's maker spaces across all of the areas that Amazon, not necessarily in every building, but kind of in every large city, there's like a maker space. So it's really fun to be a part of that. I am a design. So then the next thing is part of the bar raiser community. And there's two that I'm very involved in. So the first one is the design bar raisers. So having a job family group of bar raisers so that we can go in and bring, like Sarah was saying, the highest quality of recruiting and interviewing and promotions, because bar raisers are part of some of those processes. I'm also part of the Women at Bar Raisers group. And so the initiative there is to bring women into the bar raising community and to coach them and develop them and mentor them, because there is a surprisingly low amount of women bar raisers in Amazon. It's kind of like when I saw the number for the first time, I was like, what? So it's been really fun and interesting to let people, bring people in and be like, you are capable, like you have really good ability to do this, let's lean into it. How can we, do all that? So, so those are the two that I'm super passionate about. And they're kind of like all nested within each other. So it's like design, ADC, and then design bar raiser, and then women at bar raisers from there. So it's like a nesting doll, but that's my stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Like, I'm part of the bar raiser community too, right? But I didn't know about the women at bar raisers, and I didn't know how low the number were. So I think you afterwards just to look into that and try to figure out why, because we need diversity in everything, not just the loop, but also in the type of roles, right? So each role. So thank you for sharing that. And Isaiah, who's one of our recurring guests here. Question for you all: before joining AWSome, what were you most excited about? When I think about it, I'm excited about all the learning and development and cultural opportunities. Who wants to take that?
Yeah, I mean, that resonates with me. That's one of the big reasons I was excited to join Amazon. I'd been, like I mentioned, CTO, like a bunch of companies, and I was like top of the engineering ladder, and in decent sized companies too, and not like tiny ones. But the idea of coming to Amazon and learning how, frankly, AWS works at the incredible scale that we work at and solve like huge problems for our customers. I mean, that's just been incredibly valuable for me to learn. I've grown a ton in my ability to not only build engineering results, but operate in ways that are frankly best for the customer. And I don't think I had always that in my past, as much as I tried. Like, I've learned a bunch of ways to do that better here too. So the learning thing is incredibly motivating for me.
Awesome. What about you, Sarah?
I mean, I would say it's sort of, I think I don't know how unique it is, but I initially didn't want to come here. When I was being recruited, I ignored the person who was trying to recruit me for months. I was like, I don't want to work at Amazon. Everything I'd heard was horrible. I was like, no. And then finally I agreed. I was like, okay, I'll do it because I'll use it and I'll leverage my current employer. That's a smart thing to do. Let's do that. And then I came out of the loop and I was like, damn it, I wasn't supposed to like them. And that just sort of planted this idea in my head. And it really was, so it's like, I didn't have the greatest start here when I walked in the door my first year or so. I was actually pretty miserable. So I think no one's more shocked than me that almost 6 years later, I am still here. But it is once you find that team and you find the function and the group, my favorite things now is that I'm excited about and that I continue to sort of like shout from the rooftops is, that sphere of influence that I have. We get to do really cool stuff. We get to build stuff. And I think that AWS in particular, we're in this very unique space of being both a mature company as well as still very innovative, still very much growing in certain sectors of our organization, which means there's so much flexibility in what we do. And there's a lot of ability then to get to influence, which is really exciting.
Yeah, your story is so common. People, it's so common. Like myself, I had an offer in hand. I was about to accept it that night, and then I got a call out of nowhere for about a challenging role, and I was like, Amazon. I heard so many bad things. Also, I didn't know. Right? Again, hearsay. And then, my former manager, my former boss that I'm very close to, like, you'd be stupid not to take the Amazon job. You'd be stupid not to go there. And I said, all right. And same thing. I was like, oh my God, I'm blown away how brilliant they are. This is exactly what I've been wanting to go to, except I didn't know much about them. I just heard stuff. And at the same time, I never thought I was good enough to join an AWS. And here I am 5.5 years later, still here. Right. So yeah, it's fantastic once you get to meet the people and whatnot. And since I have you again, there's a question from Part-Time Hobo, a question for Sarah. Have you ever gotten to one of the cable ships and see the undersea cables get deployed?
I have actually. So I have not been out on the ship when the cable is actually being deployed, because as much as I love boating, and believe me, I do, I don't want to spend 3 to 6 months at sea in order to get to experience that. So not my jam. But I am particularly fascinated by subsea cable ships, especially as the daughter of a naval architect. So ship design has been with me since birth. but they are incredibly fascinating ships. So I am well educated on how they functionally work to lay the cable. And it is really, really fascinating.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this, Jess, like in your opinion, what is the most challenging part of creating and fostering an environment of inclusion and belonging? And what's been the most rewarding?
Yeah. It's a very, very deep question for me. It's a lot. So I'm also on the board of Out in Tech, which is a nonprofit that helps LGBTQ folks succeed in the tech industry. And so this is something that I think about a lot. And I think there's a lot of systemic challenges. Bias is real. And trying to help people recognize that bias exists everywhere, regardless of intent. We're humans, like we're naturally built to process some kinds of information quickly and make snap judgments, because otherwise, like, you couldn't walk down the hall if you didn't do that, literally. So like part of that influences how we make decisions and how we think. And I think that can be hard to recognize. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is recognizing that bias exists. And so it's easy, I think, then to say, yes, bias exists. Great. Now I move on with my life. No, like, what do you actually do about that? I think that's the really hard thing also. And a lot of it comes down to, the thing I like to say is, like, when you make a decision, for some set of decisions, like, we're all moving too fast. You can't re-examine every single decision, but for some set of decisions, pay attention. Like, did I make a choice here that I actually have data to support? Like, if I go back and I think about it, like, what were the reasons that I really made this decision? Be really honest with yourself. I think being honest with ourselves is one of the hardest things too. It's just like being really open about, like, all of our wonderful features and flaws that we each have. And like, okay, I made this decision and here's the data that I used to make this decision. And oh, okay, well, I can't quite justify it with this data. I must have used something else. Well, maybe that was bias. And that's okay. I think we all use bias all the time when we make decisions. And I think a lot of it comes down to recognizing it and making sure that we're making choices that are in line with our values, or at least our stated values. And if we state that we value diversity, if we state that we care about differentiated opinions and perspectives in our workplace and in our lives, then we should endeavor to have our decisions reflect our values. And I think that's the hard part.
I agree. I always like to say that old phrase, put your money where your mouth is, right? So again, I believe in everything that I believe in. I try to take an action, like even volunteering tomorrow, have a bunch of kids from an urban charter school coming in to our JFK office and in New York City, and being one of the panelists there, have a conversation what it's really like, and feeling their questions, and then showing around and showing them our Boston Dynamics robot walking around the place. So, and they're fascinated by the VR and all that other good stuff. So yeah, again, put your money where your mouth is, and let's really focus on it's not just a talking point. It should be an action point. So, Maria, what are your thoughts in general?
Which question?
No, what are your thoughts of that? Again, like, a challenging part of creating a fostering environment.
There is an interesting challenge. In addition, like, there's like another layer. So it's like a subgroup of what Jess is saying about, diversity and inclusion. And then fostering an environment to encourage understanding. So not only on the human level, there's also like a job family understanding. So I have a very specific and unique job family that not many people have the chance to interface with or work with on a regular or semi-regular basis. But yet UX is a word that everybody feels like they have a relationship with. And they're like, oh, I know what UX is. And I'm like, well, explain it to me in your words. Like, you tell me in your words what UX is. And then we have this really good, slightly mind expanding conversation about like what we do on a day-to-day. So not only do we have to create, safe and comfortable and exciting places for humans to work, we have to create a connective relationship with my job family and other job families, because many times people will be like, oh, I don't work on external consoles, so I don't need to talk to UX. I'm like, well, do you build CLIs? Do you have decision making? Do you talk about information architecture? Like, how does this work? And then they realize through sometimes weeks and months and sometimes years of just slow integration, they're like, oh, we do a lot of UX stuff. Please help. So that's probably the hardest challenge is just fostering a community understanding.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. And thank you all for sharing your opinions on that. It's super important, and I think it's something you just need to chip away at daily. Period. So, we have less than 10 minutes. Wanted to highlight, as far as some of the openings that we might have. I think Jess, was there a rec that you wanted to talk about a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So we are hiring software engineers for the Firewall Manager group right now to work on our new project. We do have a posting that needs to go back up publicly.
Yeah.
I sent Ray the link earlier, and he was like, "I don't think this one works." So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, aside from the qualifications that, the basic qualification and everything else, can you just talk about the nuances? Like, what is the ideal profile for that type of person?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, my group really just needs experienced engineers who from kind of any background. What we look for in this level is somewhere between 4 and 8 years of experience, thereabouts. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it might be a little less than that, but somewhere around that. And this is professional coding experience working with Java, C#, Python. Rust would be really cool.
Yeah.
But mostly working with major languages at scale, and be able to deliver results. I mean, obviously, if you have a security background, that's a huge bonus for us. If you've been working with Gen AI, that's also a huge plus for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No one was looking for it, just you. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I mean, the team is based mostly in Seattle. We have a couple folks open for Bay Area spots, but that's what we're looking for right now.
Gotcha. And when we talk about, you said something, coding at scale. And I think a lot of people don't understand what scale really is from our perspective. And this is where I always have the conversation, even when it comes to titles. People like, well, I was a principal here. You're recruiting me for a senior. Like, yes, because of the scale and scope of what we actually do. What you did is great. So you have the great foundation, but that's this level here. So you can talk a little bit more about that for this role.
Yeah, I think what that exactly means varies by the job specifically. But for engineering, the scale that we deal with is, worldwide, hundreds of thousands of servers, millions and billions of requests per second. The kinds of engineering that you have to do to handle that and resiliently to be able to handle failover, to be able to handle when things break, to be able to make it so that it's a resilient system and incredibly secure. We have a ton of security goals that we have internally and externally mandated that we just always have to hit. And so there's a lot of balancing that has to go into that to deliver something that really works. Sometimes it smells like regular coding. Like if I'm writing a Java library that responds to an API, that smells pretty much normal for pretty much everywhere else I've been. But if you're working on a system that's, for example, the last product I launched was AWS Verified Access, and there we built a system that, if you look at it from the outside, it's an HTTP proxy. It takes HTTP requests, it checks them for some things, and it forwards them on. But it has to interact with our core networking layers. And so you had to understand things like Geneve. You had to understand really low-level programming to be able to make that work. You had to be able to connect and reestablish connections from a given server to a fleet of customers' target VPCs, depending on what happened. And the things are constantly changing and moving fast in the cloud, so the customer might reconfigure things. You still have to make the traffic flow. You have to be able to check and run millions of requests per second for this HTTP server to be proxying through. You can't just have a Perl script that echoes it, which is something that I definitely have written in the past.
Right.
So that's the kind of scale that we deal with. I'm sure everybody else on this call has lots of interesting other conversations about ridiculous scale that we have to handle, but that's what it means for me.
Yeah, I'll mention one thing before we go to Isaiah. When I interviewed and the outcome was, hey, we want to hire you, they said this to me. It's like, you're incredible. We love what you did. Now we're going to teach you how to do it at scale. I was like, okay. So I was like, it's just and they like what I did for 18 years, right? But let's do it at scale at the level that we need. And then when you come here, holy crap. And then you realize
Well, yeah, like
Really
I built
needs.
a company. I built a company that had $100 million top line, and I was like super, super proud of having gotten to $100 million. And
Right.
here at Amazon, it's like, congratulations, you woke up in the morning.
I know. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we only have a couple minutes, so quickly let's bring on Maria. So let me quickly get you on screen. So it says, question for Maria: my daughter's starting college next fall, and UX is a route she wants to go. What is the best program for her to study since UX is not really offered?
Okay, slightly controversial opinion, but I have a bachelor's of fine art in studio. So clearly this worked out perfectly, and I have a degree dripping with sarcasm. There are so many different ways that somebody can get into UX. It just depends on their individual motivations, like human-computer interaction, computer design, even software engineering to a certain extent, information architecture and software engineering. What else would be really great? Anthropology is probably a really interesting one because I've kind of made glib comments that are getting more and more serious over time that we need a design anthropologist to unpack all of the bizarre changes and choices that have been made over the years and get us to where we're going. Kind of talking about the whole thing at scale. One of my mentors says, what got you here can't get you there. And so there's so many different things about that are so true. So if you have anthropology with a minor in software engineering or anthropology with like a minor in CS, like that's like mind expanding for getting into UX. There's so many different kind of boot camps that you can do on the side of this. I wouldn't necessarily say, a single boot camp is, the path paved with gold into UX. Because UX is a lot of things. And so many people in this industry will say that they got to where they are by being super okay with two things. First, feeling like they're on fire and learning from it and kind of figuring out how to navigate to it. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is just kind of being fired and being okay with that and learning with it. And what I mean by that is accepting the path to progress is sometimes the path through failure. And failure is something that we do celebrate at Amazon here. Something is, we do talk about, fail fast, but learn quickly. We make, Jess was saying, we make a lot of choices, we bias for action. We're like, yeah, that wasn't the right thing, but we learned a lot from it to make a better choice to go the right direction. So I fully recognize and apologize. That's not a real answer, but there's so many different ways, but just really sit with how you look at a system and how humans thinking move through systems. And there's so many different ways in college and university to get there.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And Isaiah, I hope that's something you could take away with for your daughter to think about. So we're at time. I want to first off thank you, Maria, Jess, Sarah, for your time. I know you're all incredibly busy, and sharing, you're just sharing everything from personal to professional, all your insights. I think there's a lot of valuable information here. Can't wait to share it out to the rest of the community. So everyone else, again, if you're streaming through YouTube, which is youtube.com/@AWS Careers, follow twitch.tv AWS and vice versa. There's great programming on both. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Take care.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.